everybody in the Future to Mental Wellness Facebook group. Dawn Sullivan here with my friend and partner, Nicole Santiago. We have a huge treat for you today. If you or someone you love suffers from ADHD, this is the workshop for you to listen to. So welcome, Nicole. Thanks for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. Hey, thanks for having me today, Dawn. It's great to see you.
Yeah, I'm super fired up. I'm just going to do a bit of a tech check. I always want to make sure we're live in the right group. But I spoke to Nicole over the weekend. Was it over the weekend? Maybe it was Friday. It doesn't matter. And we're both really super passionate about family wellness, and we really believe and know that there's not one person in the family that's having a problem or is the problem, right? And if you're a mom, you know this down in the bottom of your heart, that if your child is suffering, so are you, or if your spouse is struggling, so are you, and vice versa, right? If you're struggling, the mom, I like to say the mom is the barometer for the family. And if the mom is struggling, like there's just this cascade effect. So it looks like we're live in the correct group. Thank you for watching us and bearing with us. So Nicole, let me give you a proper introduction. Nicole is a mom of 3. Some of her kids is homeschooling, some are remote learning, and some are in school, 3 young kids. And Nicole is a former educator, very passionate about ADHD. She's an author. She's written books. We'll tell you about that in a minute. Written books about ADHD. She really believes there's this generational component to ADHD and how it really affects people in the family. And she's also now currently an ADHD coach, which is really inspiring and interesting. So I'd really like to get into that, if that is cool with you.
Oh, yeah.
So Nicole, tell us a little bit more about what drove you to learn more about ADHD and become really passionate about it, that you wanted to start offering solutions to other families?
Right. So my eldest, who is about to turn 14, but he was diagnosed when he was 7. So I sort of started learning about his process and how his brain worked, and started realizing what is ADHD. It had been thrown around, but that was a while ago. So I was just learning about it. And then the more I realized and read about it, I said, okay, so I think I have this type. I have the inattentive type. And then I realized the kind my husband had, and started learning more about how learning disabilities go together with ADHD sometimes. And so I started learning about some of the trouble in school. And as an educator, actually education is a great fit for the type of ADHD I have. When you're a teacher, you're constantly moving. You have to have quick ideas. You have to be able to roll with the punches, flexibility. So it actually was a great job fit for me, but it wasn't a great fit for my family life, which is why I shifted into ADHD coaching. But that's when I started realizing, hey, this is a problem. And I started thinking about my family, and my parents had different struggles. We had different mental wellness issues in my family. And I started seeing, I wonder if that has to do with that. And then I started seeing it in my husband's family. We have addiction in both sides of our family in the background. So all of those patterns, I was like, wow, these are really patterns, and people don't make the connection. Mm-hmm. And when you start suffering down the path with untreated ADHD or mismanaged ADHD, the outcomes are not good. It can be not a happy place to be.
Yeah. Let me ask you this for a second, because as you were growing up as a child, a teenager, even young adult, were you aware that you had ADHD? Had somebody diagnosed you or started treating you for it?
No, that wasn't, mental health wasn't always it was more of stigmatized in my family. So, and it wasn't like it was bad. I was just a little different. I was the disorganized one. Mm-hmm. My room was always a mess. I could probably find stuff, but it was always a mess. I got work done, but it did at the very last minute. I was pretty smart, so I didn't have to study that much. But when I did have to do something, I did it all the night before. Mm-hmm. So my grades were always good. I always did well in school. I liked learning. I became an educator because I enjoyed the way school worked for me. I liked it.
Yeah.
But so nobody ever saw it in me when I was younger. Nobody. If you talk to my mom now, she'll point out the times that I left my purse somewhere. I forgot something really important. I misplaced a paper back when we had thumb drives. I remember I misplaced an entire college paper and was in tears, those type of stories, but I didn't know what it was. Of course, I thought it was me. I'm like, oh, I'm just a flake. I really thought I was this flaky woman that couldn't get my stuff together.
I
So,
think that's really important that you're saying that, because how many people in our lives were like, oh, she's such an airhead, or she's such a flake, or, oh, she's such a mess. She's a hot mess. Like that's the
yeah,
new term for flake, right? A hot mess.
right, yeah,
So we're kind of labeling these as personalities, but not so much as like disorders that we can improve on, right? We're just sort of giving somebody a label and moving on, like, oh, that's just how she is. We can never rely on her. She's not responsible, that kind of thing. And
right,
so, like, who wants to grow up like that, right? We
yeah.
want to grow up feeling empowered and strong and, reliable and responsible. So like fast forward a little bit. So when did it start to get in your way? Like, so you were functional, you kind of made, you did good in school, you did well enough in school, were sort of capable, functional, but when did it get in the way for you?
It got in the way for me in college, but I still didn't know why. So it took me like almost 7 years to finish undergrad. Like I
Oh,
dropped out a couple times. I wasn't motivated by the core classes. I became a Spanish literature major. I was a Spanish teacher, so I loved Spanish. I went and studied abroad in Puerto Rico, and I really found a passion for the language. And I was like, wow, I'm good at this. I learned it rather fluently for a second language learner. So once I found that what I cared about, which is what I see with a lot of ADHD kids, when you find what you care about, you'll spend hours studying. I was learning and studying literature in a second language. I was probably the only American in most of my upper level graduate classes, and I loved it and I thrived. And I feel like that's what happened with me. The college piece, until I found what I really loved, I really struggled. I spent a lot of money because I dropped out sometimes and paid for semesters. So that's probably the big note where I really noticed it
yeah.
the most, but still didn't know what it was. I just, again, it was that flaky thing. It wasn't until my son that I said, oh, this is actually like maybe the way my brain works. It's like kind of a condition. Maybe
Yeah.
I should learn more about how to get through this so this things don't fall through the cracks anymore.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So as a mom, you weren't medicated, or as a young adult, you weren't medicated or put on, some prescriptions or something to try to solve it. It was just something you learned to cope with, right?
Right. And not always well. Like
Not,
sometimes I failed at it. And that was how I learned. Okay, so I can't do it this way. So it was a lot of trial and error.
yeah.
And I would love to help people skip that part. Like, let me give you some strategies that'll work right away, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step of that is just awareness in labeling it correctly, right? Wouldn't that be the kind of the first step to say, okay, well, now that we know what this is, like, let's work on the solution, which we're going to get to during this interview here. I can't wait to get to the solution part. That's where my head is at. But so you had your son. He was around 7. He started to struggle a little bit, and then walk us through that.
yeah, so he started to struggle really since he was a baby. He cried a lot. He was that colicky thing. But a lot of times we know that's the nervous system. They're starting to realize that even babies, like their nervous systems are different. So they're hard to calm down, hard to settle. They may not be good sleepers. All of those are signs that if you're not aware, you're just like, oh, my baby cries a lot. But a lot of times it's a nervous system issue. So that's how he was. He was always tough. He used to run away. He had a lot of energy. I was a first time mom. So I'm like, well, maybe all kids are like this. I was lucky that my mom was the one who said, hey, he seems like really hard. Is there do you need more help with discipline? Like what's going on? And I was kind of like, no, like I was an educator. I had studied a lot about discipline and how to reach kids. And I felt like, I was like, I have a pretty good toolbox, but I'm struggling. I didn't know that he had a behavioral issue, right? So I just thought, okay, then I got to do better. And then there's a lot of shame that comes with parenting a kid that has behavioral issues because it's invisible. Yeah. And everyone just says, why can't you control your kid? And so that shame and that feeling of how do I help other moms who are going through this, being ridiculed by family members who have the best intentions at heart, or who are looked down upon by neighbors, or you don't want to go to public engagements because you feel like my kid's going to be the crazy one and that's going to reflect on me. That deep shame, it was shameful.
Yeah, thank you for being brave enough to acknowledge that, because how many moms out there listening right now, or if you're listening on the replay, have felt that shame or sadness or anxiety? How do I go to a birthday party? How do we go to the mall? How do we go to a holiday with our family without somebody sort of looking at you cross-eyed, take care of that kid, right?
You're a hot mess.
Pull it together. Yep, that's right.
And so for me, that's where my blog came from. So in 2017, I really started blogging, and the writing is so therapeutic for me. It's why I started publishing books. It's a very therapeutic process for me to write and to help others with my writing. And when I started, I couldn't stop. Once I started the blog, and then I got comments and I was getting feedback from other moms and other parents. And I realized how much this was, I wasn't the only one with this story. And I felt like, hey, I bet I could help other people. Like, I just didn't want to write a blog that nobody saw. It's like where I really started wanting to move forward, find more tools, learn more, research more about ADHD and the nervous system. So it was really it came from pain, and that's how a lot of things come from, right? But
well, if you were comfortable, you wouldn't have sought out change, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what resources were available, and then how did you start to learn about this gut-brain axis potentially being a solution for ADHD?
So I started by studying a lot about the autism research around the stool transplants and stuff. I started learning about the microbiome. I read a bunch of books on it. And when I started researching the gut-brain axis, I found that there were these supplements that could maybe help your microbiome, help increase the diversity. So I knew that, but I was like, well, it can't just, is it just a pill? Like, what else, what else can I do? And then I sort of found this whole movement around building your gut-brain axis and increasing your brain health holistically, how it's exercise, how it's your diet, how it's joyfulness, your gratitude, your meditation, like all of those pieces have to come together. And I've interviewed some amazing different therapists and scientists around this, plus just being in this community that we're in right now, this group, you find people who are aware of this connection, and we all can rally around each other and give each other support. So that was when I found this, I felt like I found a home. Like this can help, right?
I agree so much. I'm so fired up because I've been in healthcare and special education for a really long time, and I have always been fascinated with how the brain works. And then a couple years ago, when I found out information about how our gut microbiome and our gut-brain axis is really a unit, it's not just, we have to stop focusing 100% on the brain and look at the whole picture. And that's what's really exciting. This is next level neuroscience, is that we're finally recognizing the bacteria in the gut has influence over, those neurotransmitters and chemicals and the communication between the two. And I know I can get really geeked out on the science piece, and I know that you love the science too, but let's break it down for people that maybe aren't so geeky like you and I. So when you rebalance the gut bacteria and you clear up the communication between the gut and the brain, what potential, what can happen?
I mean, for me, it's so much more clarity. It's just clarity around my everyday. There's motivation around tasks that I might not necessarily want to do. It's definitely an entire process, but just by getting the gut balanced, I mean, just using the bathroom regularly,
right?
When you start seeing those changes, then you're like, wait a second, if you journal about anything, or just if you're paying attention to your symptoms, you're like, oh, I'm starting to do this regularly and I can think more clearly. I'm not as foggy. I was able to have more patience with my son who's online learning or whatever it is that you're having to work through. To me, it was a lot of the stress resilience, a lot more patience. Just, trying not to raise your voice, like just trying to stay calm. All of those things sort of started to get better. The more that I took the products and was healthier and exercising. And as soon as you start to do one step and see results, the other ones are easier. Like it was easier to have more energy and get up and exercise in the morning once I felt like, my stomach had calmed down. I wasn't bloated like I always had been before. So all of those things sort of work together, and it's like a snowball effect. Like you just feel like getting better and better.
So you're talking about so many great points right now. And it reminds me too that kids with ADHD, ADD, autism, they have a little bit of a disconnect from their body, like their sensory processing within their body. So things like constipation, upset belly, internal cues that many of us would be like, oh, I need to do something about that, or I need to go to the bathroom, or I need to whatever. Kids aren't always connected to the sensation and what to do about it. And I know it's very frustrating for parents and very frustrating for teachers and lots of people. So what have you found? And I think your child is also on some of our kids products too. Is that right?
Yes.
So what
Yep.
have you found when you start to connect for yourself and your kids, your family, when you start to connect your gut brain axis and help everyone in your family really being aware of what those sensory signals are, and like what have you seen around behavior and attention and focus and that kind of stuff?
So for my middle one, who I'm working with the most right now, he also has a lot of gut problems. He just has always had that as since he was a baby. And I just feel like he does have a little bit of a longer attention span. He's always a pretty happy kid, but then he gets frustrated when he can't understand something. And a
Yeah.
lot of it's because we're working on the dyslexia testing, and a lot of it is things aren't computing for his brain. So it gets him frustrated. And then that underlying frustration just stays with him.
Yeah.
But finding if we take, like, I'll give him like a kid's mood pack or something. If I feel like, hey, we're doing a reading lesson, this might be a little stressful, try to kind of preempt it with that and just make sure he's on his probiotic, asking him, how's the bathroom going? Like, you have to ask,
Yeah.
ask them how they're doing. Do you feel different? Is your tummy hurting after dinner? And we're getting more and more no's. We're getting more, yes, I'm using the bathroom. No, my tummy's not hurting.
So more accurate reporting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then also for me remembering to give the medicine, like I'm inattentive too, right? So I'm not always like really, if I get lost in the moment, I could forget, but they need to
Sure.
take their stuff in the morning. And once
Yeah.
we have a routine around it, it's like, oh yeah, you got to take yours and your juice. Mommy takes hers and her juice, or whatever shake we're taking. Kind of like get the structure
Yeah.
going, but also me being clear helps me be a better mom, since I'm usually the one in charge of the medicine cabinet. Moms are usually in charge of the medicine cabinet,
For
whatever you
sure.
put.
Yeah.
So for me, that's, hey, mom's clear. Mom knows what to get out, and set out your juices in the morning for the one that's going to school at 7 and the one that's doing this home. And
Yeah.
that comes with the more I'm healthy too.
Yeah. I have to ask you, Nicole, what's your level of shame or guilt around your family today?
I would say it's like a 2. I mean, 1. I really don't have. I think we're great.
Yeah.
I think we're a really great people, really great family. They're really great kids. I think they're rambunctious and fun. I think they're different, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
So I love that you said, rambunctious and fun, like you're actually finding joy in each other. And I know that you guys like to do a ton of outdoor activities and adventures, and you really make life fun in general. And that's really important to you. Nicole, spend a minute or two telling us about your book. I know you have a new ADHD for homeschooling. Is that correct? And then we'll put the link, I'll come back and I'll put the link to that book up above in the comments here. And what does your ADHD coaching look like?
Okay, sure. So the book is, there's actually a series on ADHD. The first one's on how to homeschool. So if you want like step-by-step from a teacher, so I made the move and it was hard as a teacher to do it. I give you all the steps, tons of resources, websites, how to go in your state. That's book 1. Book 2 is about parenting and how to get the shame out of ADHD parenting. And book 3 that's dropping next week is about holistic brain health, and it leads with gut health, and it teaches you all the different strategies, things from intuition, dream journaling, to the diet piece, to the gut health, to craniosacral therapy, whatever different things I've tried to help improve our brain and our life, I put it in that book for you.
Love it.
So that's the one that's coming out. For ADHD coaching, I lead with values. So if you want to work with me, I'm going to find out your values and your children's values. I'm going to have them take some personality tests. I'm going to have to see if there's maybe disconnect, like does one of the parents have ADHD and they're not aware of it? Is that causing disruption in your home? Is there arguing? Like, kind of work through like who is the family first, and then I just give strategies. Like, I was just talking to a mom this weekend whose son was having a meltdown after Halloween, and I said, can you try music, like, because it's different distraction methods. She put on his favorite song. She's like, oh my gosh, she texted me right back. He calmed down. So I want to be there. I can, however I can help you, because sometimes during those meltdowns, it's like our brains just go away. It's stressful. Yeah. And I want to be there and be that person that you can confide in and rely on. I have the book. You can read about it. You can take the supplements, but if you really need somebody to hold your hand, I can do that too. And that's what the coaching is. It's more accountability.
I love that. So the other thing that came to mind, and we'll wrap this up in just a second here. The other thing that came to mind is when your child is struggling, it's even harder if if the mom or the parent also has brain fog. So I strongly recommend, and I'm guessing you're going to agree with me, that is, if you wanted to help your child get started with products that are going to help, you know, with their digestion, their bowels, their focus, their behavior, all the things, right? Their joy,
Right.
get started on the products yourself also. Like, I'm just a firm believer that if you're both working together on the energy, the restorative sleep, the, you know, all the things, like letting things roll off your back. We don't want to be walking around on eggshells around each other in our own home. So I feel like this is just a multi-part kind of solution where the moms and dads, if they feel the benefits of our gut brain axis products and help our children get started in these products too, then like the sky is the limit. Would you say, Nicole, for what your family can create?
It really is. You become more of a team because you're like on this journey together to get happier, to have more love and joy. And we're very loving, like we're that touchy-feely family already, but that doesn't mean there wasn't like more arguing than there should have been. That doesn't mean there weren't eggshells when somebody didn't eat or somebody wasn't on their, you just want to be on the journey together. Like you said, it just makes it more coherent. And you feel like you feel proud of your whole family instead of feeling like one person has this issue. Let's treat this one thing. Let's think about it as a family. Who can't feel better? Who doesn't want to get better stress resilience? Even if you don't have ADHD, like we all could.
100%. If you don't have ADHD, you have something. You have something. You know, in 2020. Yeah. So let's just admit it. Okay. So here's what we want you to do next. If you can relate to any of this, what your next step is to tag the person who added you to this group. If it wasn't Nicole or I, tag that person who added you to this group to this video and let them know that you are ready to get started to optimizing your family's health. And that person will get on the phone with you or in Messenger and talk to you about what the best product recommendation is specifically for you. Okay. We have a very simple product line. We have 22 products. Very, very simple. Some people are on 3 or 4 products. Some people take everything. So whatever it is that you require, the person who added you to this group will help recommend that. If you want to connect with Nicole around her ADHD book or coaching, you're welcome to do that as well. And if you have any questions that we can answer for you, go ahead and drop them in the comments and we'll be happy to circle back around. And my dogs are going crazy, sorry. And I'm trying to like wrap this up and answer them for you a little bit later. Nicole, any last words in our video before we wrap it up?
I would just say, find your joy today and release all that shame because it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve your family. So let it go, tag that person down below and find out how you can start feeling better right now. That's what I would say.
Perfect. That's a perfect way to wrap this up. Nicole, thank you so much for your time today. And I hope